All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to connect three ideas that honestly seem like they have nothing to do with each other: chaos theory, how our brains grow, and a totally new kind of toy for building a better world. And this whole wild journey, it really kicks off with a single question.
I know. It sounds like the beginning of a really weird joke, doesn't it? But stick with me because the answer reveals something pretty profound about how we think, how we learn, and even how we can tackle some of our biggest problems. And believe it or not, the connection is way more scientific than you might think. So, the key that unlocks this whole puzzle is this idea of a cognitive toy. And no, we're not just talking about something for kids. Think of it as any kind of interactive system, anything we play with, really, that helps us shatter those rigid, stuck mindsets and actually lets our intelligence expand and grow. Okay, so to really get what this cognitive toy is all about, we first have to understand the problem it's designed to solve. And it all starts with that absolutely crucial mental shift that happens to all of us during our teenage years, that incredible journey from one way of seeing the world to a completely different one. And this transition, it's everything. On one side, you've got what we call constrained thinking. Everything's black and white, the rules are absolute, and your identity feels totally fixed. But on the other side, that's expansive thinking. It's flexible, it's full of nuance, and it gets that you can be a lot of different things at once. The big question is, right, how do you get from point A to point B?
Well, a philosopher named Dennis Verhage has a name for this journey. He calls it prismatic cognition, and he breaks it down into three stages. First, you start in a state of innocence or constraint. This is where all your perspectives are kind of locked together, really tightly bound. Then comes transformation. This is where new ideas, new experiences, they come in and create a kind of productive disorder. They literally break those old rigid rules. And that chaos, it leads you to the final stage, integrity or freedom. You end up with a mind that's way more complex, flexible, and whole.
Okay, strap in because this is where things get really, really mind-bending. This whole model of how our minds develop, it's not just some philosophical theory. It actually finds a stunningly direct validation in, of all places, the world of quantum physics and chaos theory. Seriously.
So in physics, there's this concept called permutation symmetry. Just think of it as a state of perfect, rigid order. It's a totally closed system where every single part is locked into a fixed pattern. Sound familiar? It should, because this is basically the perfect physical equivalent of that innocent stage, that constrained black and white way of thinking.
So the natural question is, how does a system, or for that matter, a mind, escape from a state that's so rigid? And the answer, incredibly, is the same in both physics and psychology. You have to break the symmetry. You need some kind of disruption, a jolt of controlled disorder that just shatters that old pattern and makes room for something completely new to emerge. This whole process is actually called a phase transition. You start with that permutation symmetry, a closed, totally predictable system. But once you introduce that bit of controlled disorder, what you get is productive chaos. And it's not destructive at all. Instead, it's an open system that's just buzzing with new possibilities. All right, so let's put it all together. It's time to connect this seemingly abstract physics concept right back to how the human mind actually develops. And I really want to stress this. This is not just some loose metaphor we're playing with. The science here provides a real physical and mathematical foundation for this model. What it suggests is that cognitive growth, growing up, is, in a very real sense, a physical process of a system escaping from a constrained state. Okay, this right here, this is the aha moment where it all clicks into place. Just look at how perfectly it all maps out. The cognitive stage of constraint, that's the physics state of permutation symmetry. The transformation stage in our minds, that's symmetry breaking in physics. And that feeling of freedom and integrity, that's the expansive, chaotic phase. The journey of the mind literally mirrors the journey of a physical system. It's amazing.
This principle is so fundamental, it even shows up in how we learn to move our own bodies. I mean, think about a baby learning to walk. At first, their movements are super rigid and clumsy, right? They have to literally break out of those fixed motor patterns to gain fluid, autonomous movement. It's the exact same pattern, escaping a fixed symmetry to achieve way more freedom and flexibility. Okay, so we have this incredibly powerful model for how we grow, and it's backed up by actual physics. The big question is, what do we do with it? Well, this is the payoff. This is where we see how we can apply this flexible, symmetry-breaking way of thinking to tackle some of the world's biggest, toughest social problems.
Let's bring this down to earth with a really important real-world issue. For a long, long time, labor exploitation was what the sources for this call a no-name problem. It was hidden in plain sight because our thinking about it was trapped in a closed, rigid system. These simplistic stories about economics that literally made the problem invisible. So to even begin to see the problem, you first have to break that cognitive asymmetry.
And this is what leads to this amazing concept called Lego justice. Now, instead of thinking about justice as this rigid, top-down set of rules handed to us, imagine it's a giant box of Legos. It's modular, it's participatory, and it's something we build together. It's all about communities actively breaking those closed, old-fashioned norms to assemble a fairer system, piece by piece.
So the principles of Lego justice are pretty cool. First, it sees justice not as a thing, but as a process, kind of like play. Second, it absolutely requires breaking rigid social rules. Yep, there's our symmetry breaking again. It sees diversity not as a problem, but as an essential building block. And it's all built through collaboration and what's called symbolic trade, basically where we exchange different values and ideas to construct something brand new together.
And that brings us to the end of our journey. I mean, think about it. We've gone from a cognitive toy, all the way through quantum physics, to a whole new model for social justice. But it all comes back to one simple, powerful idea. Our thinking isn't fixed. It's a dynamic, interactive process. So if thinking is really a form of play, and if our minds really can break free from their old patterns to create new possibilities, the question I want to leave you with is this: what kind of world are you building?